Good evening. I'm Dawson Trotman. I am so proud to see all the members of Speech and Debate Club work together to present a debate that truly educates voters and will certainly help them make informed decisions in the upcoming elections. The questions that will be asked tonight were written over the past week, and many were submitted online by Berlin residents. Neither candidates have seen the questions that they will be asked. They are only aware of the general topics tonight's debate will cover. This debate was entirely the idea of Speech and Debate Club, and I think that it is a great representation of how teenagers can become more involved in politics. We hope that over the course of this program, you will learn more about the candidates and what they hope to do for the town of Berlin. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Christian Damiana.
Good morning, good evening, and welcome to the 2017 debate for Berlin Mayor. I'm pretty excited to get started, so I'm going to introduce the candidates, Mayor Mark Kaczynski, the former DEA agent and incumbent mayor of Berlin, and former superintendent, Superintendent Richard Paskowitz. It's now my pleasure to introduce Anna Wooden, who will be singing the national anthem. Please rise for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please remain standing as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to start by just explaining some simple rules for tonight that the candidates have already agreed to. First off, each candidate will have a 3-minute opening statement and a 3-minute closing statement, and as well as 2 minutes to answer each question. Every candidate will have a chance to answer each question. By virtue of a coin flip, Mr. Kaczynski will go first with the opening statement. There will be a timer that will go off at the 30-second mark, the 15-second mark, and at the end with bells. This will indicate to the candidates when they need to begin wrapping up their response. Personal references about other candidates are out of order, so I expect that you will both please keep decorum. And I would like you guys in the audience and the candidates to please shut off your cell phones now and make sure that you're ready for an informative debate. It's very important that you understand that campaign literature is not allowed in this room, and that booing or applause is not appreciated, and that at the end you will have a chance to express your gratitude to the candidates after the closing statements. Thank you. We will now move on to questions and opening statements. Mr. Kaczynski, you may begin with a 3-minute opening statement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I appreciate the Student Debate Club, the high school, the advisors, everyone that was involved and organized. organizing this debate. I think it's a great thing we're doing. I know there hasn't been a debate for several years, so I think this is a good idea. And I think it's also great that we have a bunch of students here. I think it's good to get them involved and understand what the issues are in their local town. I'm sure as they hear a lot of issues on the national level and state level, it's always good to know your local issues, because those are the issues that really affect you, I think, the most. So it's great that they're here, and hopefully they'll get some benefit out of this. What I'd like to say is just a little bit about my experience. Obviously, I'll be going into my second term, I hope. And, you know, I've been in town, born and raised in Berlin here most of my life. Was away for a number of years with the DEA. I'll talk about that in a moment. Graduated Berlin High School, sat in not such a nice auditorium in the same location here, obviously many years ago, for a lot of different events. And we're very fortunate. We have a beautiful school here to conduct this debate in. And my wife graduated from high school in town. My son graduated a couple years ago. He played probably just about every sport imaginable that involved the ball, whether it was lacrosse, football, basketball, little league, you name it, he did it. He's off in college now. He's doing great. After college, after high school, I went to the University of Connecticut, and then I went off to law school in California. Came back to Connecticut, practiced law for a little while in the Hartford area, and then I joined the United States Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration. I was very honored they hired me as a DEA special agent. Spent 30 years as a DEA agent, and worked around the country, worked in California, worked in New York City, and I spent some time in our headquarters in Washington, D.C., in our Office of Chief Counsel. And I handled national programs, budgets, personnel, policy, wrote some regulations for the Justice Department when I was there. Came back to Connecticut, agent in charge of our Hartford office for a number of years, and I finished my career out as the agent in charge of our Bridgeport office. And then 20 years ago, when I did get transferred back, we moved back to Berlin. So I've been here for about 20 years now. Our son was born around that time. So it was obviously love this town. It's a great town to come back to. And I'm honored to have served as the mayor for the last 2 years. A couple things that are important to me, that have been important to me, is how responsive government is. I know from my federal career that if someone called me that was a citizen, they expected an answer from our local government. And that's one of the things I've worked on. Getting that information to everybody. Our town employees work very hard. They're pretty stretched. They're stretched to the limit, and they work pretty hard. The other important issue I've tried to deal with in the last few years has been taxes. No one wants to pay more taxes. We try and keep them as low as possible. A lot of people in town can't afford to pay that extra $50 or $100. So we try to work on that and make our government much more efficient and much more fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. We will now move on to Mr. Paskowitz for a 3-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Christian. Thanks for coming this evening. Special thanks to members of the High School Debate Club and to John Line, the faculty advisor, for organizing this event. I certainly hope that it's productive. I am a newcomer to the political arena here in Berlin, yet I'm not a newcomer to Berlin. I've lived here since 1958. While I'm a newcomer to the political arena, I'm not a newcomer to the arena of serving as a town volunteer or as a town leader. In my younger days, which were obviously many years ago, I was a proud member of the Kensington Volunteer Fire Department. And I passed the state of Connecticut test, and I am a certified state firefighter 1, which meant at the time I could have gotten any job in any paid department in Connecticut. Obviously, my career took a different path, and then I ended up serving on the Berlin Board of Education for a little over 7 years. And it was on the board that I served several leadership positions, including that of being vice president for several terms and ending my career on the board as its president. My proudest moment probably serving on the board is when I was the president in 1994, and I handed our daughter Tracy her diploma at the high school graduation, which I obviously as board chair signed. I've had 18 years of experience as a superintendent of schools. I worked in 4 different districts. In 3 of the 4 districts, I was invited to be the superintendent. I did not compete. The only community where I competed for the position was here. And it was here that I had the wonderful opportunity of being Berlin's longest-serving superintendent in over 10 years. During those 18 years, I had the chance to work with large groups of people, varied employee groups, large amounts of taxpayer money, and supervised many issues, worked on policy, and I left each of those districts with my head high. So now I'm here running for mayor. I've been doing a lot of walking, not running. I've actually been walking around town since about Labor Day. And the paper reported I visited 1,000 homes, or really more than that. I've promised one thing, and if I'm elected, I'll work hard and do the best I can. But I'm going to make a second promise tonight, and that's to the kids. If I am elected, I will meet with Mr. Benigni and ask him to guarantee that you have at least 10 snow days, early dismissals, or late openings this year, and that there will be no homework on those dates of the month that are either even-numbered days or prime numbers. Later on, you can tell me what dates those are.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. We will now move on to the question and answer portion of this debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. The first question goes to you, Mr. Kaczynski. What do you believe is Berlin's biggest opportunity for economic development? And what policies do you plan to implement to encourage good businesses to move to town?
Our biggest opportunity is certainly to attract all businesses to town. And for the last 2 years, we've done that. We've attracted over 40 businesses to town. And that information is available, obviously, from our Economic Development Director in Town Hall. 40 businesses have relocated, have opened up their doors, and or moved to Berlin or expanded. A couple of the big opportunities we had these last 2 years, we attracted Forest Machine from Rocky Hill, aerospace manufacturer, very well respected. They were looking for a new place to build a new building, looking to move, and they chose Berlin, which was a great opportunity. The building's going up on Christian Lane, you've probably seen it. They're looking at expanding, so they're bringing some extra jobs to town. Hopefully those people that are working there will visit our shops and our restaurants. So we've been very successful the last couple of years with the business community. We instituted a tour of the town program with real estate developers. Twice now we've had bus tours, a donated bus by one of our good corporate citizens, Premier Limousine. We toured the town, showed real estate developers what we have to offer, whether it's on the Turnpike, whether it's on Farmington Avenue, wherever it may be. And we had some good response from that. One of the big projects facing us, and after 16 years on planning and zoning, I approved that transportation-oriented district with our new train line coming through. We hope to revitalize that area and maybe make a little bit of, I know we all look for always look for the center of Kensington and Berlin. That's an area that we need to develop. We have 4 or 5 developers very interested in that area. We've already had a consultant study it. We've had a lot of public input. We will have more. And we also are looking at a residential development on Kensington Road that will be going to planning and zoning shortly. It's now in wetlands. So the town has been moving forward very well on the economic side, and I hope to continue with those plans because it's been a proven success so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. The same question goes to you, Mr. Paskowitz. What do you believe is Berlin's biggest opportunity for economic development? And what policies do you plan to implement to encourage new businesses to move to town?
Question, can I get to rebut first what he said?
You may do either.
Okay. First of all, regarding the bus tour of the community, while I think that's a great idea, I started that way back in the year, in my career as superintendent in 2000, when we would take all our new teachers on a morning tour of Berlin to do 2 things, to see the things we're all proud of, our schools, our facilities, get to know a little about the history of our town. Beth Stoll would come along and give us history, and we'd end up with a picnic at Timberland Park. So I think it's a good idea, but it really started a long time ago. As far as the list of 40 new businesses that have moved, expanded, or whatever, I'm sure there's a list, but I suspect on that list there are companies that decided to come here prior to the recent administration change. I I think that the list probably doesn't include the companies that have left or closed down. I suspect that the Acura dealership on the Berlin Turnpike is on that list. If the truth be known, my family has purchased 11 automobiles from that dealership, and that's the reason they expanded. Part of the reason. I'm a strong believer in supporting local business because I think economic development is twofold. We need to encourage companies and businesses to come here, but we need to support them. If I have a chance, I'll come back to that. As far as Forest Machine, I'm very glad to see that building going up on Christian Lane. Again, I think that's a building that David Forrest agreed to come to Berlin before the change in administration. The real reason David Forrest came to Berlin from Rocky Hill, I was his 8th grade science teacher, and he wants an update about Newton's laws of motion. And I told him I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. You have the chance to answer the next question as well. What services do you think the town needs to provide with taxpayer dollars?
Okay. Public safety, education, services for our seniors, police protection, that's part of public safety, fire. What I'm concerned about, especially with fire, is being a former volunteer, is that the demands on our firefighters have changed so much, and the training restrictions, the training requirements have gone up so much that we're losing our volunteers. And while we have an incentive now, it's only a matter of time before I think we have to look at doing more for our fire department so that if there's a call at 8:30 in the morning that we have people to respond. Years ago we had Kensington provide ambulance service to the town. That's gone the road of the past. Now it's done by hunters. Education is one of the most important services because we've got to prepare our youth for the future. We also know that as property owners, the value of our houses will reflect the reputation that the school district has. When single-family homeowners go to sell their homes, more than likely the prospective buyers are people new coming to town, and the first thing they want to know about is the quality of the school district. Berlin has, and always has had, a very good school district. If anything, it overperforms. Because if you look at what we expend in the classroom, it's far less than comparable towns. There are 112 pre-K-12 school districts in Connecticut, just like Berlin. Of the 112 districts, 83 spend more in the classroom than Berlin does. 83 of the 112. I think that's sad. We have expenditures in other areas that I think need to be revisited and spend more money on the classroom activities.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. Mr. Kaczynski, you may now answer the same question. What services do you think the town needs to provide with taxpayer dollars?
Well, obviously, the government is here to protect its citizens. Public safety is number one. Fire protection is equally as important, of course. We've taken care of that during this term. They had a 30-year-old Motorola radio system that they don't even make parts for anymore. Sadly, out of date. We obviously approved that to be improved, so if you call 911, they will come to your house and they can communicate with each other. And it had failed once or twice already. Fire equipment, we approved 2 new fire trucks. We have a plan, I think it's about a 10-year plan, to replace the older vehicles. And we replaced 2 of them already. They're already in our fleet. We give them the best training. We bought new breathing equipment for them this year. So we've taken care of public safety. We bought new batteries for the tasers for the police department, and we obviously are supporting them 100%. They're doing a great job. The school system. The school system, we put a lot of money into the school system. We have a brand new high school. It's a great school. We put a lot of money into renovating all the other schools this year, some projects. We finished up some HVAC systems and improvements. We gave the Board of Ed actually a 2.7% increase. That's the biggest increase they've gotten in many years. Okay? We did that this year because after meeting with the current superintendent, Mr. Irwin, and meeting with the president of the Board of Ed, Matt Tenza, we had a great conversation with myself and the budget chair, Dave Evans, And that's what they were looking for, that's what they got, and they're very happy with that increase. So we took care of the schools. I might add, we also upgraded school security. You know, in today's world, with what has just happened in New York City and what has happened around the country, unfortunately, we have approved the security vestibules at the school as well. So we've taken all the major components of time services that we can provide to our residents. We also increased social services because a lot of people are still hurting. So we've added that into our town budget this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. After 123 days of disagreements, the state of Connecticut finally passed the budget. How do you believe the new budget will affect the town of Berlin? And how should the town adjust?
Well, first of all,
I'm sorry, this question is for Mr. Kaczynski first.
Okay.
Thank you. It's amazing it took this long, obviously. I don't think any of us are too happy with what has happened in the legislature in Hartford. That's sad. I mean, we have our own town budget to pass, all the towns do. And, you know, we made a decision early on. Some towns, we had all discussed it, many towns discussed it. We discussed it, maybe holding off for the budget. And we were actually meeting in Hartford with Dave Irwin, our superintendent, and I saw panic in his eyes. So we decided that would be a bad decision for everyone, for the town side, for the school board. So we went forward and passed our budget on a wing and a prayer, hoping we would see what would happen in Hartford, and it took, of course, until just the other day to know. Fortunately, we came through very well. I don't know how long that will last. I mean, obviously our town has some very high bonding levels, $90 million, but we were very, very concerned with what would happen. But we came through very well. The school education cost sharing grant, I think, lost $345,000. But on the town side, we actually gained some money in some different, they had a couple different grants, and actually a grant we didn't even expect. So fortunately right now, we're looking pretty good as far as what's coming from Hartford. So we were very fortunate because it could have been much, much worse for our town. And so we appreciate that that happened. But there's still obviously issues ahead fiscally. As I mentioned, our auditors are not happy with our bonding levels. No one should be happy with those bonding levels. We have a budget of $84 million. We have debt of $90 million. A big chunk is the high school. We're starting to pay that down. The debt still climbs next year, and then it will be starting to go down. So we have to just be conservative going forward to make sure we pay down that debt and get within something reasonable, which is 55 to 60% of our budget. We're at 105% now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, the same question goes to you. How do you believe the new budget will affect the town of Berlin, and how should the town adjust?
First of all, a quick comment about the bonding level. Yes, our bonding now is about $90 million, primarily due to the last building that needed to be renovated and updated, the flagship school of the district, Berlin High School. We now have 5 modern, up-to-date schools. We are in good shape. Our bonding levels after next year will begin to decline. The reality is we could not have borrowed money at a better time for this building than when the town did. That's a fact. As far as the state budget impact, I understand that our loss this year will be slightly in excess of $400,000 and an additional $500,000 last year. But as you drive around Berlin, it's interesting to see the signs posted by the Republicans, don't bankrupt Berlin. You know, when you look at the state of Connecticut, back in 2007, when Jody Rell followed then Governor Rowland, there was a $900 million surplus. When Jody Rell was governor, for the first time ever, over a billion, B-billion, not million, over $1 billion was deposited into the rainy day fund by Jody Rell. 1 year later, Governor Dan Malloy was elected, and the state of Connecticut had its largest deficit ever. I've been accused by a Republican member of the town committee that I'm a pro-Malloy advocate. Ask anybody my feelings about Daniel Malloy. What I will say is he inherited the biggest deficit ever. The way he went about it was shameful, and you don't have enough of hours in your day to hear me talk about Malloy. So don't tell people that I'm a Malloy supporter. It is just the opposite. We aren't going to bankrupt Berlin. The Democrats have been in power in this town for many, many years. Just drive around and see the things we're proud of. We have some needs, and I hope I get a chance to talk about them, because we can't just put our heads in the sand and ignore the needs of this community.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. Hypothetically, what do you plan to do in your first 100 days and by the end of your 2-year term as mayor of Berlin? Yeah, that's yours.
First part's easy. We're going to hire a town manager. Whatever you want to call it, Denise McNair was let go, terminated, fired last January. It is now, I think, November. We still don't have a town manager. We had a half-hearted search. The most important town position, we don't have one. It's shameful. And then, in last week's Citizen, there was a clarification by the Republican Town Committee about the severance that had to be paid to Denise McNair. And if you read the ad closely paid by the Republican Town Committee, they had to pay the severance because her contract called for it. I have her contract up here if you'd like to see it. Denise's contract did not call for severance if she left to go to another town, if she retired, if she decided she didn't want to work anymore. It only called for severance if she was terminated. If they did not terminate her, there would have been no severance. So what they wrote in the paper last week was, again, a half-truth. Besides the severance that they paid her, because they chose to terminate her, they've paid unemployment. They've paid her medical benefits. Yet they admit she did a fine job. There have been letters in the paper citing some of the great hires that we've had in the past. The current finance director, the current town engineer who's acting town manager. Yes, they're good people. May I ask who hired them? Denise McNair. They also cited the hiring of the town clerk. Fine hired the town clerk. It's really pretty shameful. They fired Denise McNair for no reason, and we still don't have a town manager, and it's costing us more every day for this.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. Mr. Kaczynski, may now respond. What do you plan to do in your next 100 days as mayor if elected again, and by the end of your second 2-year term?
Well, we plan to move forward with the progress we've made in town for the last 2 years. I hope to continue that. It's interesting about the town manager. Yes, we need to hire a town manager. It's funny, though, that we talk about the search was half-hearted. When they hired Denise McNair, there was no search. She was just made the town manager. I guess that's okay. We've conducted a search. We've conducted interviews. I think we have a couple likely candidates, but the entire council, of course, in this search agreed on it. That's both sides of the aisle working together. Not like you read in the paper, we don't work together. We work together, and we interviewed all the candidates that came before us, opened it up a second time, and since it got so close to the election, there was no rush. The town is in great hands with Mr. Healy. The morale is never higher at town hall, and that's not according to me, that's according to the HR director. So that's not my opinion. That's her opinion. So the town is running fine. He's doing a great job. Is there a rush to do it? And we didn't want to do it before the election. I don't think that was right to the town or to Mr. Healy or to whatever candidate we may offer a job to. So I don't understand that issue at all, quite frankly. We also talked about a search firm. It's going to cost a lot of money. For a search firm. We tried to save some money. We're actually, believe it or not, we're saving money by Mr. Healy being the acting town manager. We're getting a town manager for $3,000 a month, plus his public works salary instead of $133,000 a year. And we've asked him about that. The whole council asked him about that. Are you working too hard? No, he's enjoying it. He said, I'm fine with it. He's fine with it, to the short foreseeable future, which we will obviously take care of that after the election. So the town is in good hands. We've been making progress. We've been being fiscally responsible. So there's no problem here, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. You may now answer the next question as well. Are you happy with the current independence of the Board of Education, or do you believe that it should be more accountable to the Town Council?
That's me?
That's you.
Okay. It's very interesting. I'm new at politics myself. I'm not a politician, the farthest thing from it. Planning and zoning, 16 years, a whole different world. I was pleasantly surprised at the town council, and it's interesting how it all works, but it's been an interesting journey. And you kind of think, I guess, as the mayor, and certainly our old form of government, you didn't run for mayor, you ran for town council. I was hoping I got on the town council. I'm a humble guy. I said, wow, I hope I get a few votes to my wife. I hope. And I got the most votes, so of the majority party, so I became the mayor. Interesting, that certainly was not in the plans. But there's a lot to learn. I learned a lot in the last 2 years, and I learned that it's sometimes very frustrating, and again, a lot of the things dealing with the Board of Ed, I had to educate myself about the Board of Ed. I'm very familiar with the school system, obviously, but Board of Ed's a different animal, and it's interesting to see that, many things are state mandated. We really have no input into what the Board of Ed does with their budget. They get more than half our budget, and so it's very expensive to run our school system, and we need to have a good school system. We all know that. Well, many of us are products of it here, and we've all been very successful. But it's a little frustrating come budget time when I can go line by line in the budgets of the other half of town, which provides our police, fire, public works, social services, tax office, all the rest of the town services you come to expect. And we could look at it a little bit closer and make some suggestions and make some changes. We can't do that in the Board of Ed. So that is very frustrating. I mean, that's a lot of that's, again, state mandated. We can't fight that. But I will say that with the relationship I built this year with the Board of Ed, that I think we had some great conversations. And that's why we came out with the budget we did. We plussed them up $1 million, 2.7%, more than they've had in several years, because we had great conversations and we talked about what they were going to use that money for and how we could obviously keep all our programs for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, you can respond as well. Are you happy with the current independence of the Board of Ed, or do you think that it should be more accountable to the Town Council?
As a former member of the Board of Education, as I said earlier, for more than 7 years, I can proudly say that I never knew the political affiliation of any of the people that I served on during those 7 years. But going, some of the things Marcus said about the Board of Education budget and going line by line. When I first became superintendent in this community, one of the things I tried to do was to make our budget document more user-friendly. We included more documentation. We made it more transparent. We had pictures, we had examples, so that people could come to our hearings, have information, and then take that information home without writing 47,000 notes in the margins around a sea of numbers. And I did that for 10 years to make it more readily understandable by the taxpayers. As far as going back to the board and being independent, nonpartisan, the taxpayers voted last November on 5 charter questions. 3 of them passed, 2 did not. The one that did not pass was the one that made technical changes to the charter, including the duties of the mayor. So whoever we win, I don't know what our duties are because that failed. The other question, the one that was most resoundingly defeated, was the question about making the Board of Education partisan. The people were aware that politics do not mix with education, and they were smart, in my opinion, to keep it that way, the only nonpartisan board in the state of Connecticut. It's interesting. I was very surprised. People have said that, I hope we get a Board of Finance question, that I was opposed to the creating of the Board of Finance by the charter changes. I was opposed to how it's going to operate, not the creation, but I hope we get a question about that later.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. You may now answer the next question as well. Last year, the town voted on charter changes that allowed the mayor to be directly elected for the first time. Do you or don't you believe that the responsibilities of mayor should change?
As mayor, I'm going to do what I did as superintendent of schools. regardless what the responsibilities may be or may not be, I'm going to do the best I can. I will be visible. I will be seen. When I was superintendent, people said that I was at too many things. I'm proud of the effort that I made to be at activities at the schools. I would do the same thing as mayor. I'm not running for this position because I have an ego. I'm running for this position because I feel strongly about this community, and I'm going to try to make it better. And I'm sure Mark would say the same thing. I'm sincere in what I say, and I demonstrated it for 10 years as superintendent. I lived in the town. My phone number was listed in the white pages. It's still there, and I'm proud of it. In 10 years, I got 2 calls at home, and one was about lice. So, I'm glad we have a nonpartisan board. It's the best thing for this community. And board members don't need political parties saying we need to hire this person, fire that person. That's for another arena.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. Mr. Kaczynski, do you or don't you believe that the responsibilities of the mayor should change?
The responsibilities of the mayor seem kind of nebulous, really. It's in our form of government with the professional town manager running the town, it is an interesting position. But what I have learned in the last few years, and my opponent, should he win, would find out there's many more than 2 phone calls that you get on your home number that's listed. Okay, many phone calls, many emails, which is fine, because that's why I took the job, that's why I ran for office, because I believe our government has to be responsible to the mayor, to the council members, to everyone on the commissions, everyone. We're all volunteers. We have to all, I think sometimes a lot of people lose sight of that. A lot of people that have come to visit me in town hall, and a lot of people still don't understand that the mayor, if they come there at 9 in the morning or noon, why isn't the mayor there? Because it's not, he doesn't have office hours, he doesn't get paid, and obviously all the people I meet generally are in the evening when all of us are available. But it's a lot of responsibility, because people, although they might want to talk to the town manager, they might want to talk to the town planner, they might want to talk to the police chief, ultimately they want to talk to the mayor. So I think whatever our charter says, we can tweak it and fix it, but I think the mayor, if you have that title, they're going to come talk to you. And that's fine with me. I've never not returned a phone call. I've never not returned an email. I've responded to everyone. I get them an answer. They may not always like that answer, but they appreciate that I got back to them. And that wasn't always the case with some of them that discussed it with me. And I thought that's very important. As I said in my opening statement, the most important thing to me as a citizen of Berlin, as a citizen of the United States, wherever we live, is that our government is responsive to us. You call your elected officials, you call your town manager, you call the town planner, whoever you call, they respond to you. That's the most important thing, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. You can answer this next question as well. The Board of Finance was newly created through charter revisions in 2016. What do you believe that the relationship between the mayor and the Board of Finance should be?
I hope the relationship will be a good one. I think it should be the same as the relationship that I have now with the Board of Education. It's fairly similar. I mean, it's a little bit different that obviously they work under the direction of the council, the way the Board of Finance is laid out in our charter. And they really will be the financial analysts, is how I would look at the Board of Finance. I wasn't sure about the Board of Finance in the beginning either, but our Charter Review Commission, which was bipartisan, many respected Democrats, many respected Republicans on that commission. And at first, the town council, some of my fellow members were not in favor of the charter revision. And I guess the part that I found interesting about that was it was always going to the people. I mean, we weren't making the decisions. I mean, yes, I know we passed the 5 questions along, of course we did, but those questions passed through us to the voters. So the voters read all the material, and we know there was a ton of material out there at the last election about the Board of Finance, about all the charter revisions, and some passed, some didn't. You know what? The people spoke. They're interested in the Board of Finance, obviously, so we will work with them. We basically would pass projects to them. They will study it. They will get back to us with how much they think we should spend, and we have to obviously see some rules as we go forward. It's new. I mean, I know we had one years ago, but it's a little bit different form of government now, so we'll work through it. But I see no reason why we can't work through it in a reasonable way, and I think it'll work out fine. I think it will benefit us. Most towns have a board of finance, folks. The state government statutes, the state statutes want you to have a board of finance. So this is not revolutionary. This is how it most likely should be. That's why most towns do it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, what do you believe the relationship between the mayor and the Board of Finance should be?
My position is that I will work with anyone in any group at any time. However, talking about the Board of Finance, we have an election next Tuesday. There are 6 candidates for the Board of Finance. How many are going to be elected? 6. And if those 6 are elected, what will happen when their terms are up if they choose to run again? More than likely they're going to be elected because there's no way we can remove any of them unless their party doesn't endorse them or all of a sudden get a slew of independents, which is highly unlikely. 6 will automatically get elected whether they get 1 vote or 1,000. I'm concerned about the Board of Finance because of the budget process. And I'm not going to get into the details, which will bore you to death. But if you read the charter carefully, and I have, the bottom line is that the Board of Finance, the town council eventually can reject the budget, reduce it, or pass it. They can't increase it. Well, I'll take that back. There is one way of increasing the budget, and that's after it goes to the super committee of 13. The 6 council members, the mayor, the 6 Board of Education members. The super committee of 13 can make additions to the budget. You can only make additions with 9 affirmative votes. The most any political party will have at that super committee meeting will be 7. The real scary thing about the Board of Finance, if the Board of Finance cannot agree on a budget to submit to the community for the town hearing, the old budget gets submitted, the prior year's budget. The prior year's budget. Many budgets are related to employee salaries, benefits, utility costs. I understand that Eversource is already looking at an increase come September. We have so many fixed costs. Imagine the disaster when we're going to be discussing approving the prior year's budget. It's not going to be pleasant. And the last thing I'll say, at 2 council meetings ago, they discussed the operation of the Board of Finance, and the town attorney, the current town attorney, was asked a question about how it would operate, and he answered the same question twice in different ways. He contradicted himself, the town attorney. And outside, he said to me, "Oh, we'll get through this." Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. You may answer the next question as well. What do you think the future of the police station should be?
Again, I've been misquoted. People are saying that I want a new police station. I want us to have a discussion about how we're going to address the needs of the police department. Have you taken a tour of that building? Have you seen the cell block area, for example, where we cannot put a prisoner in a cell block without a police officer sitting outside to protect that person from trying to commit suicide? There are a lot of issues with the police station. Now, it's interesting, the Civic Moxie report about Farmington Avenue. That's going to be an interesting discussion in the next few months, and I'm looking forward to it. But I've read it pretty closely, and if they think that we're going to get a lot of retail development as part of the residential complex, I have a question. I wonder if that's going to happen. Retailing in this country has changed. It's changing. It's changed in Berlin a long time ago. We had family-run businesses. Grocery stores, shoe stores, appliance stores, furniture stores. We had 2 vibrant hardware stores in Farmington Avenue. They're gone. It's changing. The transit-oriented development will work as long as people can get on a train and go somewhere to a job. God forbid if Hartford loses its magnetism as a center for people working. Why are you going to commute? You know, that's a problem. Providence is a vibrant city. Why? Because people get on the train and commute to Boston every day. I hope people in Berlin have a place to commute to work when that whole process is done.
Thank you, Mr. Peskovitz. Mr. Kaczynski, what do you believe the future of the police station should be?
Obviously, we're going to do something with the police station. 30 years in law enforcement, I don't think I'm going to let the police department fail. They don't fail. They're doing a great job. Obviously, you've seen the signs. The rank and file endorsed me as the mayor because I've had many meetings with the rank and file. They are in the police station every day. But mostly they're in their cars every day, as we know. They're out on patrol. They're not in the police station. There are some issues. Of course, we have to update it. We all know that. That was voted down purely on financial grounds, okay? And I made that clear in several meetings. I don't know, I've been probably misquoted 100 times on this. We'll make it clear one more time. Because our bonding levels were so high, and because of what we knew I might be facing from Hartford, thank God. I had second thoughts when I voted it down. I would have given them everything. 30 years in law enforcement, they're my brothers and sisters, okay? My heart's with them. But as a leader, as the mayor, I can't do that. I have to look at the whole community. I couldn't give the community another $20 million debt at this time, okay? And you know what, after that decision, interesting, I talked about all the phone calls I get. Not one phone call, not one email. I didn't run into one person, I take that back, one person in the last year and a half since we took that vote that said, why didn't you do the police station? Everyone else, to a person, said, thank God, Mark, you didn't vote that in right now, it's too expensive for us. So, obviously we're gonna look at that. We've already been looking at perhaps renovating in place, perhaps still Farmington Avenue. I don't know yet. But we will study it, we have some time. And the Civic Moxie study, that's an advisory study. It's not binding on anyone. We had a ton of public input into that. As we go forward with the development plan by the train station, we're going to have a lot more public input. I added public hearings for the budget this year. I want that public input. We need that public input. So nothing's decided yet at all, and we'll see what comes in the door from the developers, who know better than probably most of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. You can answer the next question as well. What is your leadership style, and why do you believe that it is what Berlin needs in the coming term? Your leadership style, and why do you think it's what Berlin needs?
Well, I'll tell you why. My leadership style is fairly easygoing. Again, I'm new to this game, politics, but I had no agenda when I ran for office. I have no agenda now. My agenda is for the town of Berlin. Do what's right for the town of Berlin. Every decision that I've made has been made with that in mind. I don't care what decisions we made as far as the police station, as far as the charter revision. There were things that the charter had not been changed in many, many years. And, with the charter revision, just to segue on that a little bit, I thought that was a great thing because we had a very distinguished commission that looked at our charter. I didn't really think all those, I think initially I thought we were just going to add some budget referendum questions. That projects over $5 million have to go to referendum automatically because we don't have that now. That's why the police station didn't go to referendum automatically. That's not in the charter. However, we have that now, but I thought once the Charter Review Commission completed their study, they had all these recommendations, send it to the people, let the people decide. So, that's the way I believe. I want to hear public input. I tell people all the time, my style is come to the public hearing, tell me what the problem is, call me at town hall, meet with me. And they do. And, and a lot of people say, we're sorry to bother you, Mr. Mayor. We're sorry to bother you and take your time up. And I tell them, look, if you don't come and talk to me, I can't fix things. I can't fix things like a 10-year-old blighted property that sat on Elton Road. No one did anything about it. They started the process apparently a few years ago. Those people came in to see me. They were very, very upset. Rats running around. You think about that on your property, rats running next door. They came to me a few weeks ago and said, Mr. Mayor, one phone call to you. The process is rolling again, and we're working on that. They told me they couldn't even find the person out in the home. We sent on a state marshal and served that person. 10 years, they told me that property's there. That's the neighbors. That's not me. The neighbors told me they've been looking at that property for 10 years. Government was not responsive to them. That's just an example. That's not the entire town hall by any means. Our town employees work hard. That fell through the cracks. But as the mayor, we can't let that happen. That's, I believe, my responsibility to make sure everything gets done, especially something regarding public safety like that and health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, what is your leadership style and why do you believe it is what Berlin needs in the coming term?
My leadership style will be very similar to what it was like as Berlin Superintendent of Schools. I led by example. I worked hard, I told the truth, and I was factual with what I said. I learned as a young administrator that I was as strong as the people that I worked with. And if I didn't have a good team of people to work with, I would not be effective. And over the years, that's proven to be true. Earlier, the mayor said something about the acting town manager and the town engineer saving money because something to the effect about one person is doing 2 jobs. In the town of Rocky Hill, I did 2 full-time jobs for 13 months. I was acting superintendent of schools and assistant superintendent of schools and handled all the finances, all the business stuff. I did 2 full-time jobs in 13 months, 1 salary. I don't have a problem with that. What I learned is no one person can do justice to 2 full-time jobs. I did them, but I learned where to cut a corner, where to leave something undone and hope that I get a chance to come back to it. If someone can do 2 full-time jobs, you don't need those 2 full-time jobs to begin with. When I worked with our administrators in Berlin, we had a rule. In our meetings, you could say anything that you wanted to me. Anything, except the Yankees are going to lose to the Red Sox. That was the one rule we had you could not mention, right, Mr. Sen? Okay. Okay, but you could say anything that you wanted to me. Because behind closed doors, that's how I learned. When we developed the public position, I expected support because it was an agreement by the team. I'm a team player, always have been, and always will.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. You may answer the next question as well. Poverty is an often overlooked issue in Berlin. What do you believe that the mayor should do to help combat poverty and homelessness in Berlin?
We have several town agencies that probably can use some additional funding to address the growing need of the people without sufficient funds. Our senior population is obviously growing, and many of them are on fixed incomes. At the meeting at the senior center, I did mention that I think the community should consider something that's done in many Massachusetts communities. They have a senior/veteran tax work-off program where people can work for the town, do various services, in return get up to $1,000 credit a year on their tax bills. I think we should look into that. It doesn't hurt to try. That would help some people. It would give them a tax break, especially those that met the criteria. Again, to help homeless, we need facilities to service these people. We need to work with the agencies in the area that provides the services. We can't do it alone. It's going to be a cooperative effort. And it's interesting, it seems like the homeless problem is increasing. As you and I drive around, you see more and more people standing at the intersections with signs asking for support. And I'm not sure if I know the root cause of why there's such an increase, but it's a challenge to our community. It's a challenge to all our communities, and I would do the best I can to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. Mr. Kaczynski, what do you believe that the mayor should do to help combat poverty and homelessness in Berlin?
Yes, it is a problem here in Berlin. I know probably a lot of people don't think it is or may not know about it, and not as much money as I wish we gave them, but in our last budget, our town budget was at a negative, but there were 2 places where we added some money. We added some money to the social service budget. Mr. Pruitt asked for that. He has we added some hours to his part-time assistant so she can help out more. That's a serious problem. We also actually added, the only other budget we added to was the building inspector budget because we've been so busy with the economics. That's another issue, but those are the only 2 places we added money. The other thing I did was the seniors, obviously, we need more senior housing. We know there's a waiting list, there's a lengthy list. We ran into a glitch. We had approved the senior housing project on Percival Avenue. I'm planning and zoning, I'm very, very familiar with it. I ran into a glitch. There was some easement from the state, not to bore you with all the details, but there's a lot of details. It took us about a year to get through that glitch, and but for myself, personally, with my planning and zoning background, my legal background, and the cooperation of Mr. Brzezowski and his team, we would not have gotten through it because it was just sitting there. And we pushed it with our state reps as well. It was a team effort. We got it through, though. We got it through, and it's going forward. He has to get financing, and it's still a long way off, unfortunately. But we got through that issue, and we couldn't even get to the financing stage. So we pushed that through, and I hope we are successful with getting that up. That will help many of our seniors that are on fixed income, and that's why that was such an important project to me and to the town.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. You may answer the next question as well. What do you foresee as a major problem that might unexpectedly come up during the coming term, and how would you deal with it?
Well, that's a good question. I guess if it's unexpected, we don't know, right? So we don't know. Yeah, right? You get the better deal on this end. We plan for contingencies. Those of us in government, certainly my law enforcement background, I had a plan for every contingency. When I went out to do a search warrant or do a drug raid, anything could happen. My agents could get shot, they could die. We had a plan for every contingency. And I bring that experience with me, obviously not in the same tempo as what I did before, but it's the same skills, it's the same management skills. You have to plan for what may happen. I mean, I think the biggest contingency, if that's what it is going to be the budget, and it's going to be the state. We'll see what happens, in the next budget go around. We kind of skated this time, as I mentioned. We did very well. We really did, compared to what we looked at. And we had been planning already. We had many meetings with the Board of Ed, with the finance director, Kevin Delaney, who was a very, very capable guy, and with the town manager, Mr. Healy. So, we look at everything. We obviously talk to our police chief. We talk to our fire chiefs. We talk to all the public works directors, social services. I mean, it's a communication effort daily. That's with our town manager, and usually I speak with him several times a week. The council gets reports on what's going on in town. So if it comes up, I think we're pretty capable of handling most things, unless it's Armageddon, which again won't matter at that point. But I think we always have contingency plans how to keep our town safe in today's world. That's very important. And I think we have some plans brewing on how to keep our town maybe safe from the opioid crisis too, which is near and dear to my heart from what I did for all those years. And it's a problem in town. And we have to look at that. We had one drug forum already that we organized, and it was great. Christian Campanelli was leading that with a friend of hers who had, unfortunately, a friend had passed on. But it was a great conversation. We started it. Our Central Connecticut Health District is continuing it. And I hope the next term to get more involved in that, because I certainly have some thoughts on it with my experience. And that's probably that's an Armageddon right there, folks. Our young people are really at risk. I've seen the heroin usage over my years in DEA go down to the level it's at now, 16. It's never at 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds age. Never, never, never. It was always a much older population, so that's a problem, but that it's here, but we are going to work for a solution for that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, what major problems do you foresee coming up during the coming term, and how do you plan to deal with them?
Before I answer that, first quick comment. You said the drug forum we organized. I'm glad you clarified it. It was Christian Campanelli that organized that drug forum, and she was the ringleader behind that, and it is a current problem. I guess I've dealt with the unexpected, as has Mark. I was a middle school principal. If you never knew what to expect, there was a job you never knew what to expect. But this is the best job I had outside of being superintendent of Berlin Public Schools. I loved working with middle school kids because you never knew what they were going to do. And I could bore you to death with situations I dealt with, some quite severe. Sometimes I felt like I was a police officer. The only difference was they had a weapon and I didn't. But I've had many years of leadership, and I've been thrust into situations far too numerous to described where I had to think on my feet and think of the ramifications of what actions I would take. But I learned that as the leader, I had to take some action. I couldn't say, well, we'll talk about it for the next 3 days. I had to learn, and I would do a lot of scenarios in my head to try to prepare, but you could never prepare for things that you would encounter or Mark would encounter in his job. So we've learned to be ready for the unexpected because it happens every day. And if I'm elected, and I expect it's going to happen again, and I will be ready for it.
Thank you, Mr. Paskowitz. We will now move on to closing statements. Mr. Kaczynski, you will have a 3-minute opening. Closing statement.
I'm glad when I go back to opening. You know, it's hard to close this. I think we've gone through a lot of information. I think we got a lot of good facts out there about what's been happening in our community. I think it's mostly very positive, and I think I've worked very, very hard. All I got to do is ask my wife because it's another phone call most nights. Oh, you're not coming home again for another town meeting? You know, and that's most nights a week. So this is when she gets to see me here at another town meeting, unless she wants to sit at town council and other meetings for the next 2 years or the last 2 years. So I think we've progressed. We've made some very meaningful changes in town hall. You know, we've had some attrition in town hall. We've consolidated some positions. We may be able to continue with that. We may not. You know, town hall is cut to the bone pretty much. But we have to be very efficient with the employees we have. They're all working harder. They're doing more with less. That's unfortunately the byline today in any level of government. So we're going to continue with that progress. We just actually merged the, I think it's happened now, we put our public grounds department under the public works where it is in most towns. We're changing a few things with our building inspector now that our town planner has left. We're actually going to have the building inspector a separate entity as the fire marshal is, and that's how it is in most towns. So we're making some progress there of things that should be changed, should have been changed, weren't changed. So we're looking at the whole operation and trying to move forward with some of that for the betterment of Berlin. You know, one that's interesting is the golf commission. I heard a lot of complaints. I'm not a golfer, so I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. I tried to learn the most I could. I visited a golf course several times. I played golf a few times very, very badly. You know, I heard a lot of complaints about Timberland. I heard from the players at Timberland. I heard from the employees, the town employees at Timberland, that many of those complaints fell on deaf ears in years gone by. That was disturbing to me. That's a great asset to the town. Hence, we went forward with this golf commission. I know it had been talked about before, but we implemented it. We got it done. We just made the appointments last week. So, you know, we're trying to move forward in the positive method, with a positive message. Economic development, I think we're doing unbelievable to have that amount of businesses. I know there's still some vacancies on Farmington Avenue. You know why they're vacant, folks? Because the landlords are charging exorbitant rent. The paint store that moved out, I love that paint store, okay? $7 grand a month they want to rent that paint store with a 5-year lease, okay? That's why the gentleman had to move out. You know, that landlord's very difficult to deal with. We had a lot of trouble with that particular landlord on planning and zoning. And that's why the other building's empty, the Dieter's Bake Shop. That's empty because, again, I'm sure his rent is over the top. Arby's building, the Dunkin' Donut guy wanted to move into the Arby's building, which would have been great, right? He had a tenant to go into the Dunkin' Donut building. What happened was their rent's $12,000 a month at the Arby's building. Arby's is still paying it. That's why they moved out. Why they signed that rent, who knows? So, you know, there's a lot of things that go into this. So it's a very complicated, you know, economic development scene out there, but I've been working hard for that. I will continue to work hard. Again, I work really 3 nights a week at a minimum. Phone calls during the day. Thank God my employer. I have some time to make some phone calls and take care of town business a little bit. We won't say that too loud. But it's been a fulfilling job, a rewarding job, and I like to think I've done a lot of good for the town of Berlin, and that's the only reason why I'm there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Mr. Paskowitz, you now have 3 minutes for a closing statement.
I too am thankful that the Golf Commission was created. I'm glad that Denise McNair started the discussion some 15 months ago when she was the town manager. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'm really appreciative of the decorum of the audience. You've given Mark and me the opportunity to speak. You've not interrupted us, and I thank you for that. I'm a humble person, and it's going to be difficult for me to say this, but I strongly believe I'm the most qualified person for this position. I've demonstrated that. Sure, there's some things that I don't know. I never knew how to be a middle school principal. I didn't know how to be a superintendent. I don't know how to be a mayor. I will learn quickly. I'm a fast learner. I appreciate and hope I can count on your support on Tuesday. If I'm elected, I'm going to do two things. I'll tell you the second thing I'm going to do, not my first thing. The second thing I will do is, first of all, meet with every department chair in town hall to hear about their operations, what they wish they had, what their needs are, some of the issues that I might be able to help with. I will do the same thing with Dave Irwin and Brian Binion. I have an advantage there. They can't say things to me that I don't understand. I did that job. But the first thing I'm going to do if I'm elected on election night, tough to say. I'm going to go to West Lane Cemetery. West Lane Cemetery is not off on West Lane, by the way, it's on High Road. But I'm going to go to West Lane Cemetery, up to my grave of my parents, and say to them, you won't believe what just happened. Thanks for the support. I'm done.
Before we close tonight, I have quite a few thank yous. I'd like to start by thanking the candidates for coming and truly participating in the democratic process. It means a lot to me in the town of Berlin, I think. I'd also like to thank my fellow speech and debate officers, Anna Wooden, Joey Kalinsky, and Madhav Patel for all of their help, as well as Mr. Line, our speech and debate advisor, and Mr. Rekor, who's been in the back helping with tech. The BHS staff and administration has been very helpful throughout the whole process, and I owe them a lot, as well as Dawson Trotman, who introduced me, and Alex Zavatsky, who's been running lights. The party chairs, Ms. Riley and Ms. Rochette, helped me very much with the formatting. We had a very productive meeting last week, and I owe them a very large thank you as well. So just in closing, the voting will start on November 7th, and the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and I really hope you all vote your conscience and really participate in the politics, because who our mayor is going to be really does matter. Thank you and good night.